like seeing the stars that up until then you'd only seen on the big screen?
Oh, my first one, I have to tell you this. My favorite star was Alan Ladd. Oh, I loved Alan Ladd in The Glass Key. If I had ever run into William Bendix, who tortured him in The Glass Key, do you remember that?
No, no.
Well, I would have smacked him. I would have done something below the belt. Anyway, I'm sitting at the old Romanoff's restaurant. I was sitting with my then husband and some friends, and someone said, "It's Alan Ladd. He's coming toward you. I think he wants to meet you." When I was the new girl in town, I thought, "Oh, Alan Ladd, what will I do?" And I turned around and I went, "Miss, oh, hi." He was about 4'11". And you know, he was always on apple boxes, or the actresses were always in troughs. But he had this magnificent aura and kind of essence about himself. And, you know, what I didn't know was that his wife, Sue, who was also an agent, wouldn't take him anywhere. And she used to say, "Alan, we can't go out. We can't let people see you looking like that," meaning looking little. Can you imagine living with that?
Hey, I do.
You're not little. Well, you're not that little.
Like coming from New York to Hollywood, was that always the dream?
No, I wasn't interested in Hollywood. I always went to films, but I was interested in being on the stage. My real love was musical comedy on the stage. It was my training. I was in ballet for 18, 19, 20 years. I was in ballet theater for about 5 minutes. Studied at the ballet theater school, could do 2 pirouettes to the right. You know, I was good quarter ballet material. I wasn't ever soloist material because I was too tall, and there wasn't a man in the Western world who could partner me unless he was a tree with arms, you see. Because when you're on point, you're about a foot taller than you are, much higher than any heels. A comedy act would have been me and Baryshnikov. That would have been cute. He could have done the pirouettes and I would have partnered him.
But it was almost like a Hollywood story, though, you being in the chorus line on Broadway. Then lead lady breaks the ankle. You get the big shot and on you go. And then there's a producer in the audience as well.
Yeah, that's right. Hitchcock and Hal Wallace. Well, there were 2 different events. The first one was in May when the show opened, Pajama Game. And she, in the matinee performance, I think it was, turned her ankle. She didn't break it, she sprained it very badly. About 10 minutes before curtain, I arrived, and there was Bob Fosse, Hal Prince, Jerry Robbins, George Abbott lined up across the stage door saying, "Where in the hell have you been, and what is going on here?" I said, "Well, nothing. I don't go on until the middle of the second act, and the curtain goes up. It's all right, isn't it?" "No, Haney is out and you're on." And I'd never had a rehearsal. Not really a proper rehearsal. So, the only thing I could think of was I'm going to drop the hat in Steam Heat, which is a very intricate dance number that Bob Fosse devised, as only he could do, derbies. And that Carol's feet are much smaller than mine. How will I fit into her shoes? That's all I could think of. I didn't know the lines. I didn't know what key I spoke in. I didn't know the choreography. But I knew I could somehow razzle-dazzle it again.
What was the feeling like that night? Must have been amazing.
You know, when my mother died, I went up to her attic to get some things. And she had kept something, apparently I had sent her, which was a long, narrow scroll of paper, signed by every member in the cast. Good luck. So there was no time. Somebody literally had a scroll of, at least it wasn't toilet paper, but it was something that was used for something the electricians used. And I found that, and I've saved it, I've got it. Every time I hear, "Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes," I feel like I want to go throw up.
What about having respect for somebody like Hitchcock, because he was such a massive name, and you sort of like, you know, plucked from Broadway. What was that like?
I didn't know him enough. It's like Columbus. If I'd known all that was going to happen, I'd never pulled up my sail. Hitch was very, very funny. You know, extremely intelligent with his black humor, and that's what I plugged into. He didn't direct actors. He didn't have much respect for actors, as we all know. And the thing that was important to him, and he told me that, was the script in the first preview. He didn't care much what went on the sound stage, and sometimes he would yell action and walk away, but not often. I mean, I didn't ever find it a negative deprivation with Hitch at all.
When you arrived on the set, though, for the Hitchcock movie, you'd learned all your lines and everybody else's lines.
I was trained on Broadway. You're supposed to know all that. So I learned everyone else's. It was a long, I think, I don't know, 10-page scene. I didn't know anything about microphones and sound consoles, and the men have to put their script pages down, and they have to be unrustled. So this poor guy, I put him through because I was so prepared. He had to put all his pages down, and as we went through the scene, you kept hearing these pages flip over. Hitch said, "You know, you don't have to do that. It's not necessary."
And then, of course, working with Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, who we just love. What was it like to work with them?
Well, you see, I was working the next to the last picture, and the emotional environment was very testy and full of tension, and Dean felt unacknowledged and unrecognized, and he was very, very funny. I wouldn't say he was the funny one, but if it weren't for Dean, I don't think Jerry would have been that funny. It was the combination and the comparisons of rhythm and so forth. Jerry is a genius and maniacal about his need to express his talent.
Was it actually fun, though, or did you feel that all the time you were walking on eggshells?
A bit, because I was new. It was my second picture I had done with Hitch, The Trouble with Harry first, and then this. There was tension between the two, yeah, and I didn't know quite how to handle it. And frankly, they had been my childhood idols, you know. My brother and I used to go see Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis all the time. And at war with the Army, we walked around with our hands like this. Remember when he was squeezing the grapefruits? You know, magical, magical moment in American entertainment history. So when I saw my idols breaking up, it was like watching a parental divorce almost. And for that reason, I took it somewhat personally.
Were you also able at one point to just be swept off your feet because you were still quite new and young to? I mean, I'm thinking of in the book with Danny Kaye literally sweeping you off your feet and taking you off to, was it?
He had an airplane, he was a pilot, you know, a very fine jet pilot, and he would take me off in his plane to dinner. We went to dinner once shooting, I was shooting Woman Times 7 in Paris, and Vittorio and he were friends, and Danny just swept on the set, and Vittorio let me go, and Danny took me in his plane, and I went to a Chinese restaurant in New York that night, came back the next day, you know. Romantic, of course, but because we lead lives that are not 9 to 5. And sometimes we can abuse the sense of unorthodoxy, I think. That's really been the most important thing for all of us to keep in check, because we're not like regular people.
Was it a case of you had to go up to someone and admit that you'd been naughty or you'd seen someone that you weren't meant to, and then they would hush it up for you?
I was a guerrilla lover. You know, I could do it under anything and nobody would see. My brother was deflecting. He was the decoy. I was the one doing it, too.
Warren Beatty takes all the heat and you just got on with it.
Yeah, it's what I didn't write about in that book that's the most interesting.